So we started with the books that were the worst and most disappointing reads of 2024, but let's bring in some positivity. Let's talk about the best books I read in 2024. Also, hi, I no longer know what my intro is, but I'm Natalie. I talk bookish, manga, and anime things here. So I'm gonna go through this list of the best books I read in 2024. I guess we'll say from least favorite to most favorite. It'll make sense once you see how I progress in the way I gush about the books. Let's start with Love Twice. So in this novella, which I'm impressed that a novella made it onto my top 10 books of the year, but regardless, in this novella, we follow this woman who has hired an assassin to eliminate her husband because he's awful. And I had an incredible time. I gave this 5 stars because I absolutely need more books and novellas that have that dynamic of a woman falling in love with the assassin they hire to somewhat need it. Absolutely need it, because the tension that the author built in this, the dynamic between both our main characters, immaculate, beautiful. I was hooked. I was hooked from beginning to end. I just kept flipping next page, next page, next page. I couldn't stop reading. I loved it. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, but I had a really good time with it, and I definitely need to continue the series. Next up is Asiri and the Amaru. If you're looking for a cozy fantasy romance, read this. Absolutely pick this up right now. It was exactly what I needed at the time that I read it. It was so sweet and wholesome and soothing. I loved Dario. Dario, what a man. What a man. I'm absolutely obsessed with him. He was so sweet. And Asiri was putting him through the trenches because my beloved has ADHD and he's grown up only hearing people be annoyed as fuck with him when he's really excitedly talking about something. And so she kept making it seem like she was also annoyed, when what she was annoyed at was the fact that she can talk to animals, but she doesn't want people to know that she can talk to animals. And the animals kept being chatty while he's talking. So she looks like she's done with his shit. And it's not my man's fault. He's innocent. But anyway, it was so cute. It was so adorable. Obsessed. I need the sequel so badly. Natalia Hernandez, where is it? Give it to me. Man, I'm rusty because literally with the exception of Love Twice, I own all these books physically. And I was about to film this whole video without holding up a single book. But the next one we need to talk about is I Was a Teenage Slasher. I love Stephen Graham Jones. Stephen Graham Jones is my beloved. In many ways, he can do no wrong in my eyes, despite the fact that there are flaws to his writing. Doesn't matter. All I'm going to say is that with some of his novels, editors, whoever you are, please rein him in a little more. Because sometimes you let him go on a little bit too much. Pull him back a little bit. But beyond that, the magic of this man's writing, I adore it. I Was a Teenage Slasher was incredible. The friendship between our two main characters, heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. I adore them. They're everything. They are everything. And I love what this novel was exploring, this concept of being a slasher as something that's almost like contaminating. Like, you're not born one, you get turned into one. And also the choice to make sure that our main character is a white kid, and it's a white kid that this is happening to. I think that was so clever, because oftentimes, I would say the majority of the Stephen Graham Jones I've read, the main character is always an indigenous character, but in this one, it's a white kid, and it makes absolute perfect sense. Highly recommend. Up next, we have Mistletoe and Mishigas. If you watched my worst books of the year, you'll notice there was some M.A. Wardell there. And this set the bar. This set the standard. This is why Teacher of the Year was so hateful to me, because Theo and Sheldon are angels, my babies. I adore them. This grumpy sunshine dynamic, beautiful. Our grumpy character who has his walls super high up and has to learn vulnerability, I eat that up. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And Theo's family, I adore them as well. They're incredible, overbearing, but so loving. This was my first read of the year, and it made it all the way to this list, to the top 10. And I knew it would, because when I read it, I was like, this is what I'm looking for in romance. Incredible. Incredible. M.A. Wardell, I'm going to need you to do whatever it is you did here. Whatever process got you to this majestic novel, do it again. Canto Contigo by Jonny Garza absolutely had to make it onto this list, because Jonny Garza is one of the best Latina YA authors out there. Like, they are incredible. I went to an author event with them, and I dragged my friend Steph from Coffee Over Apples to this event. So literally, this is a signed copy of Canto Contigo, and I have another edition of it as well. Anyway, Jonny Garza does no wrong in my eyes. When it comes to their writing, absolutely no wrong. They are excellent at writing incredibly heart-wrenching stories that also have some of the sweetest scenes and interactions between characters. Stunning. Truly stunning work. That's why I'm a loyal Jonny Garza reader. I'm gonna keep reading everything they come out with. But in this one is in particular, the exploration of grief, of what it's like to live after you lose someone incredibly important to you and who you looked up to. Wow. Truly wow. It also talks about the homophobia in Latina communities, which I think is such an important conversation to have, because there's so many beautiful things about Latina culture, and I'm incredibly proud and happy to be Puerto Rican, to be a Latina, but it doesn't mean that the culture is without flaws. But yeah, this was stunning, amazing. Rafi is my beloved son. Please give me more characters who are cocky, but have the skills to back it up. I eat that up. That is a full course meal for me. I'm gonna go for it every single time. I blame my all-time favorite series, All for the Game, for this brain rot, for giving me this brain rot of loving cocky characters, but who are actually skilled, so that's why they're cocky in the first place. Beautiful. Beautiful. Incredible. This is how you lose the time war. When I tell you romance and poetry peaked when this was published, I'm not exaggerating. This is stunning. This is incredible. This sci-fi novel is probably the best love story I've ever read, because it's not a romance, because it's not written in a way that a romance novel is. That's why I'm saying love story, but it's incredible. The love confessions here, the professions of love here, I'm speechless. I insist. Poetry peaked here. I annotated this, and I had to control myself. I wanted to annotate so much more because it's just so beautifully written. Incredible. I can't believe it took me so long to read this, when at its peak, so many people were talking so positively about this. I'm just glad I finally picked it up. Then we have Icarus by ancrum. Listen, the biggest reason I resonated so closely with this and loved it so much is very, very personal. and I don't want to talk about it. But I resonated so much with our main character, Icarus. His whole emotional journey, I understood him. I understood where he was coming from, and it was a lot. And the romance between Icarus and Helios, be still my heart. Be still my heart. I love them both so much. They are my babies, my sons. They deserve nothing but happiness. And also, look at these sprayed edges. They're gorgeous. Amazing. Yeah. All I need you to know is that if you look up the summary of this book and you're at all interested in reading it, please do so. Please do so, because it's so well worth your time. I adored it. The President and the Frog was another novel that I heavily annotated. I loved this. I hadn't picked up another caro de robertis since I read Cantoras, which I loved when I did read it. And this one called to me, and I'm so glad I picked it up. The writing style here, the cadence of the words is gorgeous. It scratches that itch in my brain perfectly. Like, the sentences are written in a way that's just, I love it. Like, when I'm telling you, the writing style here is exactly like the peak of what I love. Like, when I'm looking for a novel that's actually really thinking about its craft and its word choice and all those things, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want and desperately need in my life. And beyond that, the way this talks about depression, experiencing depression, I related to so much. There was a period of my life where I was experiencing depression, and this is an incredibly accurate and close to home depiction of what that was like for me. So this was a very, very, very special book for me to read because of that. Not just because of the beautiful writing style, but because of how it put into words that experience that I had. Like, let me read you a quote. What superhuman mental strength does it require to lift your thoughts to the right frequency for survival? How to find that strength? Where to source it? What's the way? Sometimes he longed only for the stupor of forgetting, of falling as if into sleep, only into a state more numb than sleep, more permanent. Every time temptation slunk toward him, he found himself rattled by, and yet... Listen, that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. Incredible. Caro de Robertis' talent in writing, there's no words for it. Now, for this next author, I'm not just saying one book by them, because I think it's more powerful to show you how many books by this author I read between the end of July, like around the 26th of July, and the end of the year. Like, all of this. I read 7 books by this author and gave them all between 4 stars and 5 stars. That's what I need you to know about my love for Mindy McGinnis. Like, I went into 2024 having not read a singular Mindy McGinnis book. I went to an author event, fell in love with her personality, immediately said, I need to get my hands on some Mindy McGinnis books. And I've never looked back. I never looked back because it was her writing. I love it. But let me highlight the 2 best books. The first one, which I would argue is to this day her best novel, and the other one that is her best catered to my sensibilities. So the first one is The Female of the Species. The Female of the Species is incredible. I keep using that word, but it's true. Like, the whole concept of having a main character who's a serial, of men who commit unlawful things against women and girls, that was already incredible. But the actual execution of it, heart-wrenching, devastating, but it's wonderful. There was no way after reading this that I was only going to read one Mindy McGinnis book. But if we're talking my own sensibilities, my own deranged energy, the initial insult is everything. The initial insult was deranged. It matched my freak. It matched my freak, and that's why I loved it. Like, first of all, we have that it's inspired by Edgar Allan Poe. And not just inspired by Edgar Allan Poe stories, but it's mainly a retelling of the Cask of Amontillado with teenagers. With teenagers, the story where a man gets walled in and left to perish. Retelling that in YA, bonkers. Mindy McGinnis is my idol just for that alone. Just for saying, no, it's not too out there to put it in YA. It's fine. And that's not even the worst of what happens in here and the sequel, because it's a duology. I recounted the events of this novel and its sequel to like 3 of my friends because I'm like, I need you all to know what a ride this took me on. Like, I can't keep this to myself. I don't want y'all or need y'all to read it because I know it's deranged, but I need you to know what I went through. Anyway, I love Mindy McGinnis, and every single one of these books is signed because I read like 3 of her books, went to another author event of hers, bought more of her books, and got them all signed. So yeah. And now last but absolutely not least is The Sunshine Court by Nora Sakavic. Listen. There was no way this wasn't going to be my #1 read of the year. I read this in a day. This whole thing, as an ebook, I read it in a day. Highlighted unnecessary amounts of passages. And once again, Nora is in the process of forever altering my brain chemistry. Because that's what she did with the Foxhole Court, with the main original trilogy in All for the Game. That whole thing rewired my brain chemistry to the point that I've officially booked a tattoo inspired by it. It's gonna be huge. Listen, I love these characters so much. I absolutely do not recommend this series to anyone who is not mentally unwell. If you're mentally stable and sane, please look away, walk away, because it's not for you. This is absolutely not for you. You're going to read it and be like, who could enjoy this? Why do people enjoy this? Why are people reading this? And that's okay. Honey, that's a sign that you're okay. Leave this to us who are not well. Because that's who it belongs to. That's who is the target audience of this series. And I never expected Nora to come back with more books in the All for the Game series. And let's be clear, when she said it was going to be about Jean and Jeremy, I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to read it anyway. But I wasn't even one of the, at the time, delusional girlies who was like, I ship Jeremy and Jean. I couldn't give less of a fuck about either of them. I didn't dislike them, especially Jeremy seemed like a super sweet character, so I had no problems with either of them. But I was not like in my mind like, oh my gosh, what if? It wasn't me, but now I'm a believer. I'm a believer. I absolutely need book 2 and 3. I desperately so. Desperately so. I need more Jean and Jeremy Please give it to me. Nora, I know you're taking your time. That's okay. I love you. Take your time. I can wait. I waited without even knowing I was waiting like 8 years for this to come out. It's okay. Take your time, but I need water. Like I need air to live. So yeah, these were my top 10 books of the year. Absolutely incredible. Adored them. Please give them a chance.